This class is concerned with the management of exit. This is to deal with when employees are leaving the organisation. For whatever reason, there is a process, and the process is the management of exit. Management of exit is a procedure all businesses must go through in order to deal with the determination of employment for workers. It brings the employment contract to a conclusion. It brings the employment to a conclusion. It brings it to an end, and it ensures that both parties, the employee who's leaving and the organisation, have a clear understanding of the reasons why the person's leaving. It's a way of collecting information from the individual about his or her experiences whilst working for the organisation. And this can benefit the organisation in terms of its policies towards its workers. It may lead to better retention rates, for example. It may lead to better practices right throughout the working lives of the people within the business. So it's an important procedure that's been developed. Employee termination must be carried through in a professional manner. All businesses need to follow an exit procedure and legally end the employment relationship. So it brings the contract to an end, and it brings it to an end hopefully in an amicable form, in a friendly way. But it's the final act in employment. It must be applied to employees who have resigned, retired, and who have been dismissed. So it applies more or less to everyone. So all workers, when leaving the organisation, will be interviewed and will be dealt with according to the process that the organisation has set up to manage the exit of that person from the organisation. Let's take resignation. It's important that an employee provides a written letter of his or her resignation. It's important that the person resigns appropriately, resigns officially. And to do that, a letter of resignation is normally required. The resignation must state the reason for leaving. This could be voluntary or it could be retirement. But some reason for leaving is normally stated, or should be stated, in the resignation letter. And the employee, I should say, must hand their resignation to their manager, who then hands the letter to the Human Resource Department. So everyone is kept informed. The manager knows that the person intends to leave, and the Human Resource Department will take it from there, will take the procedure from there. On receipt of a resignation letter, the Human Resource Department will determine the last day of employment. The employee is required to work up until that day, until the last day. So once the Human Resource Department receive the letter of resignation, the final day for work has been determined, and the employee should work, or must work, up to that date. Now, it's common to have an exit interview. Exit interviews are required by all employees. The interview is expected to take place on the last day of employment. So the very last task, really, facing the person leaving, is to attend for the exit interview. Exit interviews are always face-to-face to allow better communication and interpretation, and also the chance to probe the employee to gain a better understanding of why he or she is leaving. So the exit interview is face-to-face, and it affords an opportunity for the management to find out exactly why the person is leaving, and to try to ensure that the person leaves on good terms. It's important that the person, when the person has left, still acts as an ambassador for the company. So the exit interview allows the employers to understand why the employees are leaving. Exit interviews allow employees to express their concerns or to suggest improvements for the organisation. Criticism allows organisations to improve their practices. So it may be that the employee has been thinking about improvements for a long time, but has felt that his manager would suppress the ideas, or colleagues would mock his ideas or her ideas. So here, in the last act of employment, the individual has got an opportunity to tell the organisation what he or she thinks and what would be good for the organisation. It's important that the company listens, or the organisation listens to what is being said. It may be a good idea or it may not be a good idea, but it's important it should be listened to and taken on board. It may lead to improvements. It may lead to better working practices. After all, an employee will have expert knowledge of the task that he or she was working on. So proposals for the improvement of that task should be taken seriously. Now, all issues, concerns and disagreements between the employer and the employee should be resolved, and the employee should leave on a positive note. So the exit interview is an opportunity to address any issues that are outstanding between the employee and the organisation, any problems from the past or any issues. So it's all dealt with at the final exit interview. The company benefits by getting feedback, as I said earlier. They are able to look critically at their own practices and their own methods of dealing with people, dealing with the employees, and even their own technical processes, how they organise the work. So feedback is very valuable. It may not be useful in all cases, but generally speaking it's valuable and it should be considered. It may provide ideas for future training and development for new employees. And it may indicate areas where existing practices are weak and workers feel that they are not being adequately supported in certain ways. So the exit interview is an opportunity to bring out these concerns. And if the organisation take on board what is said and implement some of the policies, it may lead to better staff retention. It may lead to better motivation and better involvement with the work. Now, quite simply, the questions at the exit interview are very straightforward, as you would expect. What are the reasons for you leaving? Why are you leaving? Leaving to retire, leaving to get promotion elsewhere. What are your views about the organisation? Maybe slightly different words used. It may not be as blunt as I've got it there. Instead of saying what are your views about the organisation, it may ask several questions to try and pull out the real views of the organisation. So several questions may be used instead of one, all aiming at the same thing. Has your job provided you with opportunities to progress and meet expectations? In other words, were your expectations fulfilled when you were in employment? Do you feel that there is a need for improvement within the organisation? Very general type of questions which will enable the person who's been interviewed to take a very wide approach. Just talk about his or her concerns, the issues that he or she faced. Very wide questions, so very wide answers, rambling answers could be given, and out of that it's the function of the HR people to distill what was meant precisely. Have your development needs been considered while working within the organisation? Were you sent on courses, or were you involved in training, or did your job change significantly? Were you motivated at work? Very wide questions. Was your appraisal system properly run? Did you give feedback on your appraisal? Were issues that were identified during appraisal sessions, were they acted upon? So, very wide questions can appear in the exit interview. Now, for summary dismissal, in circumstances of dismissal, an employee will not be considered for an exit interview. They are being dismissed. They are being dismissed for some issue. It's a summary dismissal. In other words, it's quick and fast, and there is no exit interview. The exit procedure is handled in a different manner. The employer has the right to give a valid reason for dismissal, for example, theft or misconduct or whatever the issue was which led to the dismissal. So the employer gives a valid reason for the dismissal, and the employee has the opportunity to respond and defend the alleged allegations. It's a double-barreled alleged allegations there, because sometimes there's the fear that the allegations were manufactured by perhaps a manager who doesn't like the employee. There may be personal differences between them, or so the employee should be given the opportunity to respond and to defend, if he or she so chooses, the allegations, the alleged allegations, and should be able to bring forward a case, perhaps to defend him or herself against them. A final decision-making process. The employer then takes time to reanalyze the situation before making a decision. So there is a process there for summary dismissal. The employer gives a valid reason for the dismissal. The employee was found stealing or was misconducting him or herself in the workplace, perhaps acting in a dangerous manner. The employee had an opportunity to respond and defend his or her conduct, and then time is taken for the employer to reflect and think about the situation. It may involve a trade union if the trade union is recognized within the company. It may involve colleagues who are knowledgeable about working practices, and also colleagues, employees who are colleagues who are also well respected by the management, who may be brought in to advise on the situation. But generally speaking, the employer makes a decision having reflected upon the allegations and the defence. That's all I'm going to deal with in this session. This one dealt with the management of exit, managing people who are leaving the organisation, and in particular focusing in on the exit interview, the final act of employment. So that's all I'm going to do here. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.